Okay, so here I have moved from 6:31 to 6:32, so I think it's a good time to go. Yeah, the state of one's mental health has the capacity to affect many things of everyday life without even one knowing it. This I have experienced too. With busy life schedules and routines, it can be tough to balance everything while still maintaining good mental health. It is very important that time is dedicated every day or every single day to focus on mental and physical well-being so that leading a life of positivity becomes possible. So that is the reason I thought, okay, at least weekly once we should dedicate 1 hour to talk something which is helping teachers or educators or any one of them who want to have one particular hour dedicated for them. So I just started these talks, and being emotionally healthy means being aware of your emotions and how they affect you and others. Also, it means being attentive to your thoughts and feelings and behaviors. Um, I think it's, being emotionally healthy also means that you take positive attitude about your ability to acknowledge your emotions. You feel that you can make choices and decisions based on a synthesis of your feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, rather than behaving in an immediate and reactive way to the your emotions. So, being emotionally healthy also means you can take on challenges and take risks and recognize conflict as being potentially healthy. This is particularly difficult for women who may be culturally taught to say yes when they really meant no. Right? Emotional and mental well-being of working women, lessons from pandemic. So we are here today to discuss this one of the important topics. We have Dr. Priyanka Dwivedi with us today. She is a faculty at Penn State University in the Department of Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. She is a former faculty of PS University, former faculty of CMR Law School, and former vice principal of NA Global Law School, Bangalore. She cleared UGC NET and KCT and was awarded with JRF Sociology. She is gold medalist in sociology from Madras University and has MSc in sociology from London School of Economics and Political Science, London. She has worked with Indian Institute of Public Administration, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, National Human Rights Commission, and the Planning Commission, Government of India. She was project associate for the report on involvement of NGOs in anti-tobacco campaign commissioned by the Department of Consumer Affairs, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Government of India. A team member for a research study on evaluation of the effect of junk food on the health of the school children in Delhi, sponsored by Department of Consumer Affairs, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Government of India at the Center of Consumer Studies, IIPA. She has more than 5 years teaching and research experience. She has widely published in journals of international repute and has recently published a book titled Gendering Public Policy in a Global Context and has presented various research papers in her areas of interest, which include women and work, gender in IT industry, feminist studies, social reproduction. Ms. Priyanka works on diversity, equity, and inclusion in corporate sector too. I must say that's an amazing profile. Welcome to Ab Initio, Priyanka. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay, very much. Thank you to you, Pooja, for having me here. And I'm very privileged to be here. And the kind of conversations that we are going to have. And I think it's really important to have these kind of conversations because these are the issues which have remained hidden and pushed back in times immemorial from historical legacy of the world that we live in. So I really congratulate you on organizing such conversations. And I believe life is all about having great conversations. And that is the reason I have not kept and chosen a PPT mode or something, because I want it to be in a conversational mode. And I will try to keep my language very understandable, and for everybody who doesn't belong to the feminist or gender research group, because there are certain specific terms and terminologies which might come to simplify the multiple structures that we have. So I will try to keep it simple and feasible for everybody's understanding. But that said, I welcome everybody to ask questions either on chat, or just feel free to interrupt and just say, hey, I don't get this. What do you think about this? Or feel free if you want to share something. So I would appreciate that, because as I said, it's a conversation. Well, on that note, so the today's topic is all about emotional and mental well-being of working women and lessons from pandemic. Now, I'm very interested to first look at what do we mean when we say working women? The entire conception that we have in our heads when we talk about working women is employed, or to any work to which monetary value or price is attached. But this entire conceptualization by so-called capitalist mode of economy misses the point that there are so many other sort of work which really do not have a monetary value, but have remained as the foundation of the society. And all of this in gender language of gender studies is termed as social reproduction. When I say social reproduction, what we primarily mean is the activities that give life and sustain life. Now, for example, the act of giving birth, that is exactly what brings us to life. But it doesn't end there. The daily chores of eating, cooking, taking care of health, our education. So entire activities which are required for sustaining life encompass the social reproductive activities. And if you look at this fabric of social reproduction, from the various tasks that are there at home to infrastructure of health, of education, emotional, mental care, all of this somewhere or the other has been pushed back in society because there's no monetary value. And it's such an irony, because the time of pandemic, and why I say lessons from pandemic, is when you look at any list of essential items of any government of the globe during pandemic, at that time it was not industry, it was not monetary economy that was essential. What was placed on the essential list was what really was important for sustaining life, the active nurses, the frontline workers, the cleaners, the sweepers, the grocery vendors, all of those activities that have been for a long time period being pushed back, being hidden from the limelight of the society, occupied the essential list. Therefore, pandemic was a great opportunity for us to reforge the societal structure and give importance not only to those kind of life-making and life-sustaining activities, but also to those very people who are engaged in those life-making and life-sustaining activities, which are primarily the women. Now, that's why I said when I talk about working women, I know the entire conversation must have probably been perceived as talking about employed women, but I want to drift apart and say the conversation is about women who are working. Now, before I go on to describe and look at mental and emotional well-being, Let us look at the concept of home a little bit. All of us know that in order to ensure that profitability, salary, monetary making is not sacrificed during pandemic, the work was pushed into frontiers of home, so-called work from home and remote work and flexi working, and which still continue throughout. Now, in general sense, the idea of working from home or remote work is perceived as a very comforting, a very relaxing experience. Let us pause here, take a breath, and look at what is home. When I think of home per se, the idea that I get of home is a place of comfort, a place of leisure, a place where I can relax, my place of writing retreat, where I can get all the quiet and I can have time for myself. What about those women who have been at home, for whom home does not signify the place of work, the place of leisure, the place of comfort, but for whom women, the home is a space which signifies their quintessential productive and reproductive workplace. We should understand that for a man, the work atmosphere and division from home atmosphere has been instrumental in understanding of home as a place of leisure. But for women who've been working at home, home is their workplace. Home is not a place of leisure or comfort or only relaxation for them. So we need to look at home and say, what are these spaces? The idea of home itself is so fluid. It doesn't bring the same emotions for everybody. So please let us come out of this misconception that if a woman is working from home, she has all the time, she can be available online, she has the flexibility, or she doesn't need social support because she's at home. She doesn't need the support of her in-laws, doesn't need to support of a maid or outsource the help because she's from home. This is exactly what was happening during pandemic. When work was shifted into the frontiers of home, the work that was previously outsourced to other institutions, schools for childcare, creches, nurseries, hospitals, institutions, elderly care, all of these institutions became dysfunctional during pandemic because of this fear of contagion. And when all of these functions were shifted inside the confines of home, who took this responsibility? It was women who had to come in and substitute the roles of all these institutions. And while juggling with all these roles, which came completely on their shoulders, they were also working and employed in paid labor. And to compare at the same time the productivity of the other gender versus women who were shouldering so many responsibilities brought in by pandemic, apart from the general, but also sanitizing, taking care of the grocery, ordering things, additional sanitization and care responsibilities, to understand that they will be able to perform at the same speed. The organizational norms of productivity, of continuous meetings, of continuous performance continue to apply. So while pandemic changed the context of society and the resources available for our emotional, mental, and physical well-being, the organizational norms, the HR policy did not modify itself to suit the changed times. And the sheer outcome of this resulted in distressing women mentally, physically, and emotionally. Now, when you think of emotional and mental health, it is a very complex and problematized term. And one cannot define it in concrete terms, but for our understanding, as Pooja already mentioned in her introduction very articulately, that emotional and mental well-being is the ability to fall back on resources of social support, of emotions, of well-being, to have the ability to produce positive emotions, to confront the challenges of life, to maneuver and navigate around those distressors that come in the way. But the very fact that when pandemic came and all of the functions that were previously outsourced fell on the shoulders of women, and they did not have resources to fall back on. There was poverty of time, there was poverty of resources, and they were juggling with multiple responsibilities. It resulted in great emotional and mental well-being distressor. Now, if you look at the other gender in the same context, due to the gender division of labor in society, it is presumed that it is primarily women who are more suited to these kind of reproductive activities. And that is a huge fallacy. We need to really deconstruct, and we need to understand that the reproductive labor is not a gender task. It is a life-making task, and all of us should be performing that. And the fact that the upbringing and the socialization of children in our society itself has percolated the gender division. We grow up as girls with emotional upbringing to take care of your father, take care of your brother, take care of your household. This is your task. You can't study. You have to make a career, but you belong as a wife, as a girlfriend, as a sister, as a daughter-in-law. And all these titles of a wife, of a mother, of a daughter-in-law, of a sister are so value-laden with roles and responsibilities as compared to the role of a husband, of a son-in-law, of a father. So when you are occupying these statuses that bring in various role expectations, we need to ensure that if we have to have a fabric of society that gives equal opportunity to everybody, that allows the same access as it allows to the other genders, we need to ensure that the beginning is made very, very early from the childhood. Because as Sigmund Freud has said, whatever a child learns till the age of 5 years is something that really becomes very hard to unlearn later. So these kind of conversations really help us to learn about it. And as women, we need to voice out. We need to create the disturbance and disruptions in the pattern to create the ripples of change. And when I talk about the ripples of change, the finest example that comes to my mind is of Penn State University. I teach at Penn State University in Pennsylvania. And in 1920s, this institution was only catering to men. Women were not allowed to study or to teach here. And when their activism of women started in 1920s, that we also want a place, we deserve a place, we have the right, that activism led to the inclusion of women in the university. And if I am studying here and teaching here, or I'm learning here, it's because of that activism. The finest example is Poland about abortion laws, America, Black women lives. So we also have great examples in India. The very fact that women activism, by activism, I don't only mean the the Freedom Park struggles of protest and Jantar Mantar are sitting, that's also very important and is a way. But I mean, conversations. Have these conversations, these discomforting, uncomfortable conversations at home. Learn to ask for help. Learn to tell your children, your man, your spouse that, hey, look, all right, this is your job. You know, do not try to idealize to all the women out there. I really endorse you and give more power to you to voice out your concerns and say you are not able to manage. Why should you manage? This really does a great help to your emotional and mental well being. And you need to teach your spouses. Please understand that as an Indian society, while women were taught to study, to be progressive, to confront the challenges, men were not taught how to live with progressive women. They are still idealizing their mother who used to manage her career and the home together without asking or telling her father or their father or dad for help or voicing the concerns. That's not okay. You are not supposed to be doing that, because that is what you're doing is unfair to your self dignity, to your emotional, mental, physical well being. And that percolates to the next generation, to your daughter and to the son. So if we have to build a society where the framework, the fabric is inclusive for all, and everybody has a right to express themselves fully, we really need to have these conversations at the dinner table, while walking, anything is all right. It doesn't have to be a confrontational conversation, but we need to have the emotional space and mental space to have conversations with our children, with our spouse, and with our parents to say it is not okay. This is a life-making and life-sustaining activity, and to live life fully and wholeheartedly and with all well-being. Let us look at this. There was something going wrong. Pandemic was a brilliant time period. In fact, it is in many ways. And scholars are already quoting that it's a missed opportunity. Missed opportunity because pandemic really gave a lot of scope to see the mistakes and the flaws that in society have been happening. Why was health as an infrastructure not given enough allocation of GDP so that it is well equipped? Why was educational sector not well equipped to handle the challenges? Why was rural education so neglected? Why were frontline workers not being paid well? When health, education, which comes in social reproductive infrastructure, was completely pushed back to being the lowest in the hierarchy of budgetary allocations, this is exactly what we as governing bodies, institutions, politicians, policymakers need to reflect. We need to understand that capitalism is all about thing making, production, monetary, economy, stock markets. And the entire focus so far has been on thing making, whereas social reproduction, which really opposes capitalism and says, hey, that's all right. Thing making is really important. But what is running capitalism is the fabric of social reproduction, which has been really pushed to behind the curtain so far. So pandemic gave us a lens and it magnified. It was a huge lens to magnify the flaws that were really neglected, that we need proper health infrastructure. We need proper educational system. We need the health of frontline workers. We need well-paid system of cleaning infrastructure that has been ignored. So to conclude my conversation and open to discussions, I want to conclude by saying that in our society, we have been exposed to a kind of a culture that emotional and mental well-being is something which we need to cope ourselves. If you have a physical ailment, if you have something which is physically visible, go to a doctor, talk to people at home, do these home remedies. But what about the home remedies of many markers that are not visible? The markers of emotional and mental distress are not visible. And something is not visible doesn't mean it is not existing. It is primarily so profoundly existing that it is existing everywhere. The manifestations of ill mental health, ill emotional well-being manifest in daily life and behavior. And you just are not listening to it. You're not observing it primarily. So let us come out of this entire misconception that has been built around saying that you need to cope up yourself. That's not okay. You are a wife, you are a mother, you are a teacher, you are a daughter, and all these roles come with role expectations. And with role expectations comes understandings, conversation, discussions. And you need to have these conversations and question yourself. What kind of expectations are you setting in the family, and why are you trying to idealize that particular role? Ask, question, converse. One conversation, one discussion will go a long way. I'm not saying you will change the society or disrupt the system, but by intervening and saying, hey, that's not okay. I'm not comfortable with this kind of a division of work. We need to think about it. The next time that somebody points out to a thing like that, the first time that you say, I am not comfortable with such kind of a sexist joke, and people say, oh, come on, it's all right, it's just a joke. I'm not okay. It's all right if you are really disrupting that particular pattern, because the next time that person, those people will be really careful in saying before you. And that's how activism leads us to where we are. Create the ripples, have conversations. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm open to questions and discussions.
Yes, Priyanka, I think before even you start, you have completed, I got one question.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Dwivedi. How we can maintain gender parity for women in the manufacturing sector?
Well, that's a very fantastic question indeed. And well, manufacturing sector, to give you a background of manufacturing sector, is primarily the outcome of the Industrial Revolution. And when Industrial Revolution started place, um, before Industrial Revolution, the place of home and the place of work were in the same space. When came the industries, and primarily manufacturing industries, the place of work and the place of home were divided. And so now there was requirement of a mobility to shift to industries and factories to so-called produce things, items with monetary value. And because of women's biological differences, it was understood that men would be easier to migrate, and they started going to factories for work. Of course, there were women, I'm not denying that, but majority. That was 19th century. Industrial revolution was way before, but that was 19th century when industrialization took the globe by scale. The masculine nature of manufacturing industry has come from those history. But today, even in the 21st century, it remains so. And as the question has posed, how do you bring gender parity in the manufacturing sector? Because manufacturing sector is still male dominated. Now, who is making the policies in the manufacturing sector? Who is making policies for whom? It is the men directors, men CEOs, men COOs making policies for men employees. So manufacturing sector is a very broad debate, and this really is one segment that has remained secluded from the changes taking place in other sectors. Therefore, to bring about gender parity in the manufacturing sector, we really need to encourage women from educational system as well as from the policy to show that this is a sector friendly to women. Today, if I'm given an option to go into service sector or manufacturing, I will go service. I know that's more friendly. I have more examples of women doing well there. So we need to ensure the human resource policy in manufacturing is really tweaked to be gender inclusive, number one. Number two, the time of work, flexible working in terms of time of work, the safety of spaces in terms of not being exposed to harassment, both emotional, physical, and mental, is really required. And workplaces need to ensure this with human resource policy. And thirdly, we really need to, as women, be more interested in joining manufacturing, and that comes from education system. And say, if I'm a civil engineer, I can go to construction sites and do that with all my safety because I know my company is responsible for me. I'm interested. So to really build a gender inclusive manufacturing sector, and China, by the way, is doing great in that. And if you look at Chinese fabric, they have a good representation of women in manufacturing, and India is doing really poor, both in manufacturing and both in gender inclusion in manufacturing. So we need policy push, we need educational push to create the safe places for women in. Yeah, I hope your question is answered.
That's a great answer, Priyanka. I think, there is one more question from him. And before I go ahead with that question, I would like to add something, as there are many teachers here. When I started reading about mental well-being, especially teachers and women and all, so I could see throughout these 2 years and 2.5 years during this pandemic, only World Health Organization was repeatedly speaking about mental health and mental well-being. There were many articles published, and they were posting on social media handles and saying that take care of your mental well-being. Apart from World Health Organization, I could here and there some other small organizations speaking about this. Rest, any government, any policymakers, or anyone else were not talking about mental health, and they were very busy, obviously, with many other issues we were facing during that particular 2.5 years. So even after that, we have seen when children come back to home and they are children come back to school, they are struggling to, again getting back to the offline classes, and teachers struggling. And even all other employees struggling, obviously. So switching from offline to online to offline was very difficult, probably phase. And I think probably during that time, we needed a lot of support with respect to mental well-being. Even in schools, you can see many teachers are overburdened, most of the teachers. And as as you were mentioning or giving example that in home, it was by default, people think that it is women's responsibility to take care of everything. And even in most of these schools, teachers are overburdened with everything. They are asked to do administrative works, and they are asked to do many additional, admissions and other related works, and they have no time to give themselves, or they have no time to, upskill themselves. Even facing Gen Z is not easy task. You get 100 types of questions in a classroom, and I have seen many videos where children are bullying teachers because they were not able to probably answer, or sometimes they get stuck and they go blank. So all these are happening because teachers are not given proper time or training. And if you look at corporates, you have training and you have coaching, you have counseling sessions, but that is completely missing in education industry. I have hardly seen any institution conducting counseling sessions or coaching sessions. There are teacher training sessions, that is again upskilling, but you don't have particular counseling sessions or coaching sessions happening in schools or in colleges. So that means similar to what you said, what happening at home, same thing is happening in education institutions as well. And when I had a conversation with different countries, teachers from different countries, I have understood that it is same everywhere. Less paid and overburdened with work, and there are only corporates, and those employees are given treatment as employees, and teachers are like always expected to be perfect, picture perfect, and they have to be ideal figures to students, but they have no support when it comes to be someone like that, right? So that is, I think, this disparity you can see in education industry, as I am there in, so I can probably share this experience. I'm not aware of other industries completely, but here this is a big issue. And I think that is why I have started speaking every weekend to teachers and to understand what is happening. So probably I thought when people listen to us, when people listen to teachers sharing their experience, education industries or administration or policymakers may start thinking that yes, we need to focus on teachers also, because whenever there were articles were like teachers have to keep a check on students, children's mental well-being. Right? Teachers have to make sure that children are not getting bullied. It is always teachers taking care of children's mental well-being. Nowhere there is a discussion on administration taking care of teachers' mental well-being. So that is very essential, because when they have equal support from the workplace, when they go out and work and at home, so that makes their probably their life easy compared to anything else, any other facilities we give. Yeah, we'll go ahead with next question.
You're very right, Pooja. And before we go to the next question, I just want to say a couple of things. Is that you talked about the problem and both the solution. You well in your discussion, you said that they've been overburdened with administrative work. They're taking care of the children's mental health, and they are teaching, and they're expected to be perfect and knowing on answers. Well, I think that's what needs to change, because as teachers, we need to unite and bring this is really important. These are our needs. And the culture of education primarily has been such that these are the roles allocated to teachers. They've been doing it for generations. Why is the discussion now? Why are you bringing this up now? It is really now. It's all right. We bring up now because we have vocal cords and voices now. So congratulations to you for bringing this into visibility. Because I know I did a survey of junk food consumption in Delhi, and I came across interaction with teachers. And then I got to know school teachers, primarily the kind of work they're overburdened with. And before we question government schools, before we question the quality of education there, we need to think about what's wrong with the giver of the education. So I want to inform the policymakers, and there have been enough reports already on this. If you really want quality education and you want so-called the future of tomorrow to be bright and beautiful and bouncy, you need to correct and look at the problem in the system. It's not about the chairs and the tables and electronic and fancy gadgets in the classrooms. It's about the teachers. The doer and the giver of the education system is distressed and under pressure, and they're not able to perform. So if you really need to improve the education system, it will not be the new education policy. It doesn't cater at all to the needs you said. Therefore, we really need to give attention to this perspective. Yeah.
Thank you, Priyanka, for adding that. Thank you so much. And Dr. Pratima wants to have a question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pooja, for giving this opportunity. As always, I would like to appreciate you first for doing the wonderful job every weekend. Coming on to Priyanka, amazing session, the way you presented, the diction, the thoughts, and your work particularly really calls for appreciation. Let me first clap for you. Amazing to listen to a young mind like you, full of energy, dynamism, and the way you had throughput of your thoughts was really very nice. Thank you, Akhil Kumarji, for echoing my sentiments. Great. So while listening to you, I was just drafting some points, and I just thought I'd add towards when you have a wrap-up session or when Q&A is opened. There are the points what you mentioned are so beautiful. And when I just look deeply, there are 2-3 important dimensions which you brought out on unification, on being united, and being empowered, what we say. With the permission of the host, I have to add certain thing in terms of when a woman or a lady, now we are in 21st century, the 22nd year is almost closing to end. It's high time, not looking at the historicity of the problem, but looking at the opportunities what this time has given. Especially when you spoke about the pandemic missed opportunities also. Perhaps it has catalyzed the efforts what has been happening already. It was a lot of simmering happening before pandemic. As of now, we see so many good changes because of that. And the word like gender neutrality in the home, particularly in the kitchen. I hear nutritionists, although I'm a food technologist myself, I feel so happy to be echoed by them by saying the best place to start gender neutrality is not office, is not at all a corporate sector, which we tend to blame, or you just narrated manufacturing sector. It all starts from the home. So when a mother is talking about equality for son and daughter, the father also, the spouse also understands. But when the mother herself, see, this is an absolutely different dimension, Priyanka, I'm bringing out. That I do support feminism a lot, but I do see there are, so-called holes where percolation happens of the thoughts and energies. And, the momentum is missed out. The reason is that a lady who is so-called, the homemaker, and I loved your line when you say working woman. Even she's a working woman, absolutely. She may not be earning currency per se, but she is working. And the day she takes CL, actual CL, we see the catastrophic effect in the homes also. And there are immense YouTube memes to videos to talk about these aspects, absolutely. So when this is happening, how exactly we expect the corporates, the COO, CEOs not to be different? When a woman herself differentiates between a son and daughter. So being a faculty trainer, and here, Pooja, I bring in your dimension also. Mental health was not only by WHO. Mental health has been really government's now priority. Every school has a counselor. And I loved your comment when you mentioned, why not a counselor for a teacher or a mentor for a teacher? I'm glad to say, Pooja, I'm doing that work from 2.5 years. I'm pitching in. I have opened also TLC Center in Engineering College only for the benefit of the teacher, which I learned from IIT Madras, where I was a student some years before. So what I'm trying to say, when a lady is equipped to be really not learning from her mother what she did, but she herself differentiates, like young mothers right now here, young teachers, when you do not differentiate between your son and daughter, you are really going to carve a new history in another decade from now. Changes are always slow, and I appreciate slow changes because they are more sustainable rather than an impulsive change which can come and again go in as a bubble. So let's start. Let's our spouses. Today, I see pandemic has really affected lots of things. We as teachers bring this dimension in the classroom and tell our boy students, look about life skills. Can they just love the life skills part? And cooking is one of the important life skills. Again, for people like us, we say the best lab of the life is the kitchen. So here in Indian system, we differentiate women, the mummy ka kam and papa ka kam. So for example, that itself is a disastrous move. So that time is over. Let's really bring in more holistic, more neutrality. not only later in the offices, but first in the homes, is I really want to say. So the message can go to all the ladies, even if you're not earning currency, you are doing a phenomenal job. So one more word, have self-value. The day we have self-value, yes, society has taken more with the more, when we are earning, we are valued more. But that's just one dimension. That's economic, capitalistic dimension. But there is another dimension of life. And for that reason, self-value is very important. So let's really bring in the aspects in the classroom, in the home, of gender neutrality in certain aspect. Priyanka, beautifully you narrated on the aspect of inclusivity. So let's be more inclusive homes first. Classrooms then will be second, followed by the offices. So, it's absolutely, the child comes from home to school to college to corporate. So blaming corporate will not help, to be honest. That's what I would like to say, Annette. But it was great being here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pratima. And everything what you said is I accept and I agree. Many schools I have seen, they have started doing this. Even many big schools, private schools, and all. But I have, I volunteer for one of the programs where we create child abuse awareness and prevention campaigns and all we do. So I have been visiting government schools for last 2-3 years, and I could see and experience more neglected areas are government schools. And as Priyanka was mentioning, there are computers, few not working, few are working, and there are no people who can probably teach through that. And infrastructure, few things are equipped, but again that is not used. So I always felt that, even in school, many teachers have no motivation. So that is what I felt, because probably for many reasons, and one of the reasons is they are overburdened and they are doing many things.
True.
Yeah,
the changes are slow, but it is just started. I will say you are very right, Pooja.
yes,
There are many corners to look at.
I think, ma'am, government should look at government schools also, because private schools are taken care, and because they have to, that is how they get their students next year. And but in government schools, I see from 70 to 30, 30 to 10, and I have seen one school with 7 students. Such a big school with 3 classrooms, 7 students for entire school, and from different classes, 3 different classes. I really felt very bad, because waste of infrastructure. If you improve the school, you will have many students coming in, and definitely that I think free food, free milk, and many other things are given in school. But only for that, children come and go for one period will not help. I think it's when teachers are motivated from government schools, they'll be able to bring in more children. That is possible when they are able to create such an learning environment within the classroom. And when 3 children go back and talk to other friends and say that this is how class happens, and other children should fight with their parents to come to school. But this is not the status in government schools. And I have seen many other schools doing great, and there are few government schools really doing great. That is because of good leadership. And the headmaster, madam, they are self motivated, and they make sure that they lead entire team with that motivation, and that is by default getting transferred to the children, right? So this is happening. And as you said, even I hope slowly this spread all the schools. And Priyanka, you have one more question. I think with this we have to conclude.
Can I add a couple of points to Dr. Pratima's very insightful suggestion and comments before we take the next question? First of all, Dr. Pratima, thank you for your very kind encouragement and your acknowledgement. I'm very grateful. And it's people like you, who encourage and inspire us that we try to do better. So thank you.
Great. I stand humbled. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. And regarding, I just wanted to make 2 observations very humbly to your points, which were really very thought-provoking. Firstly, when you said about feminism, and I take this up because I think it's a good platform to inform people For everybody's kind understanding, when we talk about feminist activism or feminism or feminist studies, the thing is that it has been transported from the West to India. Please understand, all of us need to understand that feminism is and was always present in India. From the times of Kerala Renaissance to the current times, it has always been present. And feminism is not about only women, it is all about marginalized section. Farmers' issues are feminist issues. Trans issues are feminist issues. So wherever any marginalized section is being exploited, there are feminist issues. We need to come out of that understanding. It is because women have been historically subjugated in global society, and it is a visible group, more or less. Therefore, their voices came to the front. But today, feminists are voicing the concerns of trans issues, farmers' issues, rural women issues, various Dalit women issues. So this is one point that I wanted to make. The second thing which Dr. Pratima said regarding mental health, I really appreciate the kind of visibility that it has got. There is still a stigma attached to mental health and psychotherapists and psychiatrists, but I'm glad this conversation is here. And that's why I say conversations are really very important. The popular culture, the media, the newspapers, the conscious, as society, as children of society, we observe more unconsciously than really consciously. Our children learn more unconsciously by observing rather than consciously. So today, for example, in the US, I know it's so common that, they're seeing a therapist. It might be a little thing of handling the readings. And a student wrote to me, "Hey, professor, I think it's impacting my mental health." I said, pause, it's all right, because she comes from a science background and wasn't able to cope with the readings. But she was so vocal in pointing to me, and I felt so glad if I'm able to bring in this kind of vocalism in India. And I'm happy that there is a beginning made. And the third point that Dr. Pratima did talk about, and I really need to add to that, is when we talk about change by default in society will always be evolutionary. Change by society, because it entails change of mindsets, change of behavior. Today we all have ATMs in India, but we take out the money and we still count the currency, because that mindset, the behavior changes over a time period. The legal instrument of dowry, sati, untouchability has been there for a long time, but the change, the impact has been slow. So it is interesting. And that's what Dr. Pratima said, that change that is, slow, evolutionary, it is sustainable. But law as an instrument, policy as an instrument has to push it. And legal scholars know that today, if I make a law on gender inclusion, manufacturing sector, it will take another 10 years for the change to be on ground. So acknowledging that change is going to be slow and evolutionary, at the same time, we need to push for voices, for activism, for legal instruments to bring down the impact over a period of time. Yeah, thank you. That's all. Thank you again.
Thank you, Priyanka, for adding that. Okay, so I think we have 5 minutes more. You said you have another meeting, so you have time. So
I have a meeting at 10:30. So I have a meeting at 10:30 again, so we can take up questions till 10:15 or 10:10, whatever you feel like.
Okay, so why divorce is rising more, affecting the society at large? Any remedies suggested in general?
All right. This is a very broad question and area of study, and one of the most favorite ones, because I look at women in technology, and that is a very high rate of divorce there. And in the US also, I'm discussing and working on that. All right. I will take up this question to also reflect on the emotional well-being component. First of all, thank you for this question, Mr. Dwivedi. And I would like to tell you that divorce is a very contextual thing, and we have diverse societies across the globe. I am presuming your question is as an Indian society, so let me take that. and take that and then answer the question. Well, if you look at Indian society, there are multiple aspects. The first point is when women started getting education, access to education gives access to agency, the thought process that I am now economically independent and I am the doer, awareness of rights and awareness of self-dignity. That implies that women were taught to be progressive and given the resources to be progressive. Men, on the other hand, were not taught how to deal and live and cohabit with progressive women. So, in the same household where you are able to accept and understand, it's natural for a sister to be educated, to be working, economically independent, have these rights. You do not see that kind of equation between your parents. And because you are not taught how it is to live with progressive women who are educated and economically independent, it led to clashes, primarily ego clashes. And that led to divorce and differences, the first point. Second, so far, there were many reasons that divorce could have happened in families and societies, but it did not happen. If you ask married couples, it is very natural. Let us understand that divorce is not something which is arising today. There was divorce happening without actually legal process of divorce. There were husbands and wives living in different rooms. There was disturbance, violence all throughout. The concept of divorce as a legal act of being divorced, the stigma is happening today because of the law and awareness. But the situations and circumstances that could have led to divorce were already existent. Today, thanks to the legal instrument and thanks to the acceptability of the society over the time period, that today women feel it's not all right to hurt their emotional mental well-being if they can economically support themselves, and that's good. Let us encourage that. Let us not stigmatize or bring divorce to a taboo. Where it is completely incapacitated as a relationship, we need to bring that step. Thirdly, that is not to say divorce should be encouraged. Marriage is a very beautiful relationship, and I'm really blessed into one. And we need to understand that the process of marriage in India earlier and now has gone a change. Now, women have a better agency and better decision makers in marriage because they are educated and economically independent. And the kind of compromises that they were making on their health and priorities earlier, they are not ready to make that, which is perfectly all right. And over the time period, you see that any society which goes through this kind of a cycle, it goes through a peak and then things stabilizes. So we are experiencing higher divorce rate because of these circumstances. And over time period, as men will learn and popular culture will promote that women are economically independent and they have to be given their rights. They are as well to be included in aspect of decision making of society. These things will stabilize. So these are all turbulences and disturbances. And domestic violence, dowry, marital rape, all of these issues are coming to light because of divorce. Let us acknowledge that when we try to study and find out why sudden surge in divorce is happening or why this time period, it reveals the underlying causes which have been hidden for a long time period. Marital rape, domestic violence, everything was existing in Indian society. The only answer why divorce was not taking place was women were the sacrificing lambs, which is not happening anymore because education has empowered them. And the whole purpose of life is to live it beautifully, and let's allow each other to live it beautifully. So please support your children if they are not comfortable and experiencing these kind of issues in their matrimonial life. There are counseling centers, there are therapy centers that really come to help and help both the partners to understand where and how they can understand and set things right. But if nothing is working out, encourage them to be economically independent and set out in finding their own ways in life. So I hope I have answered the question. Well, it is a broader perspective, but more or less, yeah. Yes,
Yes,
Pooja, you were
yes,
trying to.
Priyanka. Yeah, I think you have beautifully summed up. And there are two different questions from Akhil Kumar and Annapurna Dwivedi. So I'm gonna mix it. How can we improve emotional and mental health and well-being in the workplace? Another question: how to cope up with toxic workplace, especially for women.
Mhm. I think they're great questions, and both are very connected, Pooja. First of all, thank you to the questioners, Anpurna and Akhil or Akshay.
Akhil.
Who's Akhil and Anpurna. Thank you very much for asking those questions. Let us look at first question, and then I will try to club the second question into the first one. What do we do about the mental health, emotional health issues in the workplace? Well, there already has been action taken place because I work on women in corporate sector to cater and to understand the emotional and mental health needs. Now, the very fact that you have a mechanism already in place or coming in place signifies that you are acknowledging the need. Earlier, there was not even a need for a mental or emotional health center because nobody knew the need. Now, I'm not saying that has solved the problem, but there is a visibility of a center. It might be tokenistic. It might be just a cosmetic, appearance of a center with no real manpower or equipped staff, but there is a visibility. So kudos to that. I know that companies like Visa are doing brilliant work. They did brilliant work in pandemic as well by incorporating the entire helpline for the entire family of the employees who had these needs. Number two is regarding the mental health and emotional health of women in the workplace. We need to ensure that the work atmosphere itself is so friendly to the mental and emotional health. Short things like short work breaks, provision for hangouts and discussion room where people can spontaneously connect with each other. Sessions like yoga, organizing, psychotherapy sessions come to a great help. In fact, day before yesterday in my college, we had a psychotherapy session for students and teachers. And I was discussing back at home with my husband that it was really instrumental in making me realize that I was getting stressed with work. Because by the time you get stressed up and symptoms show, it takes a long time. So these kind of weekly sessions on yoga, meditation, conversations on how you're navigating your day, orientation talks when employees are onboarding, orientation talks and videos on identifying your mental health, and even including a day or two in a month when you can just take leave and say mental health relaxation. Just like women are now getting menstrual leave in a month because they want to relax on the day, they not feel so productive, would go a long way. And the very fact that this is happening today, I think a beginning has been made. So we all need to work together because you might be distressed with a different issue. I might be with a different issue. So mental health is impacted at workplace by several parameters. So as employees, we need to be more cohesive, inclusive, and accepting to other employees, which will make that a comfortable place to work in. And from the corporate angle, inclusion of agencies which cater to counseling, psychotherapy, meditation, yoga, workshops, discussions like these. How are you identifying and navigating your day would really, really help. Like how appraisal happens every year, we can have mental health appraisal maybe just fortnightly. It'll go a long way. Okay, to the second question of Annapurna, she says how women can cope up in a toxic workplace. Toxic workplaces is a very broad concept. So when you say toxic workplaces, a workplace can become toxic because somebody is experiencing discomfort and exclusion from meetings, or somebody is not included in conferences or hangouts, or somebody is experiencing immense work stress or eve teasing, or not finding the workplace safe and being targeted because of different accounts. So toxic workplaces, the reasons are different, but overall, the answer to this is to make workplaces more friendly. How do you try to accommodate an angry brother or a sister or a spouse at home? With love? The way you would treat, it's very simple, you know. How would you treat your best friend if she makes a fallacy? You would tell her it's all right, it's okay. But if you do the same thing, you will be harder on yourself and say, how the hell I did this? I'm perfect. I need to do it perfectly. So we need to be kind to ourselves, number one. Number two, we need to be kind towards our fellow colleagues. And it is a great obligation on the employers and human resource policymakers to really take care and observe whether the workplace is becoming toxic. What are the modifications? Have conversations, talk to your employees, to have team meetings, and give the space, because many times the employers don't come to know that you're having an experience of toxic workplace. As an employee, if I know that this is a comfortable atmosphere and I can walk into my HR or my team lead or my team manager and he say, this is what I'm experiencing, and I know I can talk it out to you. That is itself a solution. So we need to create workplaces and work atmosphere where we encourage employees to come to us and talk and tell us, speak out. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Priyanka. I think we took extra 10 minutes of all of them who are with us. There is, I think, a few words from Dr. Pratima. I just want to read it out because it won't be visible on YouTube. Wonderful inputs by Dr. Priyanka. I wish to add, toxic environments at homes or workplaces can be handled by increasing our EI, by self-value, self-awareness, and understanding that the person who is behind toxicity is him, herself, in pain or trouble because of jealousy, anger, competitiveness, disgust, sadness, etc. So empathetic approach and directly talking it out help rather being revengeful or returning the same to the sources. We must make ourselves and our team mentally stronger. Official policies via HR department and positive lifestyle approaches are great ways to. Thank you, Dr. Pratima. These are
Really insightful. Yeah, I just want to add to that as Dr. Pratima has already pointed, that I wanted to add that toxic workplaces should give space to people, any workplace for that matter, should give place to participants and employees to voice out. But the home as a space, when you return after work, home as a retreat, home as a relaxation, you should also be able to express the experience of working or any discomfort that you're experiencing at home. So toxic workplaces cannot only be resolved by workplace alone. Of course, that's the primary place where it needs to be addressed. But home as an atmosphere, as I was talking in the beginning, needs to be inclusive so the voices and discussions can take place here. And if it's too much, and let us seek psychotherapists, let us seek help, because sometimes you do really need some kind of an expert intervention, and we should encourage that as well.
Yes, that's very true, Priyanka. I think we have that stigma attached with consulting counselors or therapists. This is still there, and I see when people are having appointment with the counselors and they're trying to cover it with some other excuses. When they take a break from work, I have seen even in my team, and I did speak to them how it is. Very normal thing, and we have to make sure that we treat this as normal so that we can comfortably go ahead and take the counseling and implement with all friends or team members help. And thank you so much for everything. It was really a wonderful session and wonderful discussion. Probably more interactive session, session that we had so far. Thank you for everyone who stayed back and still are there with us. And okay, so those who joined late, I will upload this video on our channel so you can watch it and you can share it with your friends, colleagues, any members you think who have to watch this. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much, Priyanka, once again.
Can I make a concluding a couple of lines that I think is a message that is really close to my heart, and I really want our esteemed participants to reflect on this. And first of all, yet again, congratulations to you to bringing this into visibility, such a sensitive discussion and matters that really need discussions and more conversations and reflections. I really wanted to conclude by a message that's really close to my heart and something we all need to reflect. In a society that we live in the workplace that we are in the homes that we are in, we all have differences in the way we appear, differences between men and women, differences in the way we behave, differences in our choices, in our abilities, in our capabilities, difference as basic as between men and women. But let us try to have solidarity among differences. Let us try to ensure that difference does not lead to inequality. It does not translate into harmful consequences for the other. Look at nature. Everything is diverse in difference. We talk about unity in diversity. Everything is different from animals to, the wilderness. But let's learn from nature and say that differences are inclusive. Differences should not lead to stigma, to exclusion. Differences should not lead to inequality. It is you don't need to understand feminism or gender studies to be inclusive. Society, workplaces, homes will be beautiful places. And I said the purpose of life is to live. Making a life and making a living are two very different things. We are here to make a life. Making a living is a part of it. So just let us be conscious that we accept the differences and appreciate them and learn from them and not let the differences translate into inequality and harmful consequences for others around us. And thank you so much for this opportunity and for the great conversations that I had. It was a learning experience indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful message to conclude with. Thank you so much, Priyanka. Thank you so much. Thank you all. See you next weekend.